Okay, chapter 12. So, practices that lift the veil. So, looking at the focus question, what can transparency look like in an equitable grading and how does it motivate? I want to go straight into a quote, or really just a little passage on page 196 at the bottom. It says, standard scales change more than the assessment designs. They can transform the language of learning and achievement in a classroom. First, rather than defining student achievement in terms of percentage score or total points, like getting a 78% on an assessment, a student's performance is described in terms of the standard. You have met the immigration standard for Irish immigrants, but haven't yet demonstrated all of the elements for the standard for Mexican immigration or the comparative response to their immigration. And then it goes on to list a couple more things as well. So something like that is much, much more transparent than just a score or a percentage, because that number, it's either going to elicit a happy response or a sad response, and there's no real reason behind it. But providing them with that information of, okay, here's what you did well on, here's what you did not do well on, is motivating for a couple of reasons. Number one, it tells the students what they did well, so they have that moment of achievement, like, hey, I did this, that's great. And then they also have a more direction with what they need to improve on, right? So last week we talked a lot about retakes, and this would give them something specific to focus their retake on, which I think would be really, really important and very motivating for the students. Looking into well-designed rubrics and how is that an important element of equitable grading? My goodness. I think some evidence of that I've seen is the rubrics that we've had in our master's courses so far, especially in the fall semester. A lot of the both classes that I took had a lot of assignments with very detailed rubrics, so that was very helpful for me to figure out what exactly the professor was looking for and what exactly the objective was, and how to structure things and things like that, which especially for our high school and middle school students, I think is extremely important to lay out those terms for them so they know what's expected of them. It's also a place where you can let students know what the requirement is in terms of like achievement level, I guess is a way to say that. So what I mean by that is, let's say you're writing an essay and part of that rubric says you have to cite at least 3 credible sources. So somebody who's kind of struggling might see that and say, okay, I need to find 3 sources, and then they'll do that. But somebody who is more high achieving and says, oh, at least 3, I'm going to go for 5 or 6. And that would just make their overall essay or whatever it is in this example that much better, because they're able to achieve past what the rubric is asking them to do. So it provides a lot of opportunity for students. Thinking about your professional career, how have your supervisors made the evaluation of your work transparent or opaque? How has that affected feelings of trust, empowerment, motivation, and how you did your job? So I think as my career has gone on, the level of transparency has increased, which is really good. So as I was going through college and the different jobs that I've had, I wouldn't get really formally evaluated, but if I did, they'd either say, hey, you're doing a good job, or you need to step it up a bit, but they wouldn't necessarily say why, and that would left me feeling like, okay, like what exactly should I do? But at the school that I'm at now, I had a formal observation, and my principal was in my classroom and basically taking notes, evaluating me on very specific aspects of my teaching. And then we had a meeting afterwards for about 30 minutes or so. We talked about my strengths, we talked about things that I can improve on, and different action steps. And I think that was really big for me, knowing what steps specifically I can take to become a better teacher in the area of classroom management it was. So one of the areas where it was a little bit less transparent was, he said, just work, you did great, but just work on your classroom management a little bit. And I asked him, I said, that's a really broad category. What specifically should I work on? And then he told me. So having that level of transparency allowed me to have a lot more trust, empowerment, and motivation. So if I can have that relationship with my superior, that's definitely something that I think I can incorporate into my classroom, and I can develop that trust and empowerment in my students as well.